welcome back to the Art of Business English. It's Andrew Ambrosi's here again, and in this week's episode, we'll be looking at the first episode in a three-part series on prepositions. So just the other day, one of my students, she was complaining that she didn't really understand prepositions in English, even though she has an advanced English level. So I thought I would put together this three-part series to help everyone get a better understanding of how prepositions work and some of the fixed forms that they have. Now, the first thing to note that is this episode does not look at things like prepositions for movement, place, or time, okay? Those are quite basic. We're going to actually focus on more advanced structure, which have a fixed form. And what's the danger thing about learning prepositions or structures with a fixed form? Well, it's that they are just that, okay? They have a fixed meaning and a fixed form. So once you know them, then you know them forever, and they don't really change, okay? So today's episode is divided into three parts, all right? Firstly, we're going to look at what dependent prepositions are. Then we're going to look at a common list of dependent prepositions, okay, with their translation. And finally, I'll give you guys some example sentences, and this will put them into context. So before we start, you may be asking yourselves, how will this help my business English? Well, it's simple really. Many of these dependent prepositions after verbs are used on a daily basis in many areas of business, okay? So you will see from the example sentences how these are used in a business context, okay? So let's get started. Right, in the first part, what are dependent prepositions after verbs, okay? So, well, many verbs or expressions, when followed by an object, require a preposition to complete the meaning of the verb, all right? Or the expression. And these prepositions must be included. Otherwise, the verb or expression is incomplete, okay? A typical one is listen to. So listen alone in Spanish is escuchar, but when we put an object pronoun such as me, then we need to include the preposition to. So listen to me. And it's wrong, I'd like to point out that it's wrong to say listen me, and this is a common mistake. In my experience, I have also seen speakers also make the reverse mistake. So what do I mean by a reverse mistake? Well, in Spanish, even though dependent prepositions are less common, they do actually exist. And one that is quite frequently used is llamar a. So for example, llamo a John a las 7. So by reverse mistake, what I mean is that Spanish speakers will apply this preposition in English. As such, they usually say, I called to John at 7, okay? Call to, because they translate the preposition a for to, okay? This is incorrect. The verb to call in English does not have the dependent preposition to after it. And in fact, it has no dependent preposition. So the irony is when you do put a dependent preposition in Spanish, in this case, in English, it doesn't exist, okay? From these examples, then, you can see that dependent prepositions are important, okay? And they help to improve your fluency. So the reason why they are important to learn is because there is natural interference with our mother tongue or native language. This means that we naturally translate what we assume to be the appropriate preposition, and this affects the accuracy of our speech, okay? So, for example, many Spanish speakers assume that because pensar en in Spanish is followed by in, then in English it must be think in, okay? I hear that often. This is a very common mistake. I'm thinking in buying a new car. The dependent preposition after to think can only be of or about, okay? So I'm thinking in buying a new car is wrong. You need to say I'm thinking of buying a new car, or I'm thinking about buying a new car, okay? Right, so now that we understand what dependent prepositions are and their importance to our fluency and accuracy in speech, we can now look at some common examples of verbs which are followed by a dependent preposition. So let's go. Verbs followed by dependent prepositions. I'm going to start with it's quite a long list. So I'll give you the verb plus preposition, and then I'll give you the translation. Okay. So the first one is, let's go, to accuse somebody of, and that is acusar. Add to, aumentar. Agree with somebody, estar de acuerdo con. Agree on something, acordar en. So I'd just like to point out that when we agree, in Spanish you'll see that it's estar de. So it's never I am agree. All right, this is a common mistake. People think because it's the verb to be, estar, that it is I am agree. And in English it's yo acuerdo, okay? You need to think it's yo acuerdo. It's I agree, subject plus the verb, not the verb to be. Okay, so agree with somebody, agree on something, acordar en, aim at or aim for, apuntar a, okay, or it's como tener como objetivo. Apologize for is pedir perdón por. Apply for a job is aplicar para un trabajo. Disapprove of or approve of is aprobar or desaprobar de. Argue with or argue about, discutir por or sobre. Arrest somebody for is detener por, okay, detener alguien por algo. Attend to, ocuparse de. Okay, attend to something is ocuparse de. Believe in. To believe in is crear en. To belong to, pertenecer a. Okay, so this belongs to me. Blame somebody for is echarle la culpa. Okay, so we blame somebody for something. Comment on, that is opinar. Okay, for example, I can't comment on this at the moment. Complain about is quejarse de. Okay, if we want to complain about something. Concentrate on, centrarse en. All right, everyone needs to concentrate on things in life. Congratulate on plus verb in gerund. So felicitar a alguien por. Okay. Consent to. So to consent to is consentir. Consist of. To consist of is consistir en. Okay, so it's a very different preposition there. Deal with. So deal with is tratar con. The next one is to decide on, which is optar por. Excuse somebody for, which is perdonar. Insist on, insistir en. To laugh at, reírse de. To object to something is oponerse a. Praise somebody for, alabar por. Okay, so praise somebody for is alabar por. To prevent somebody from doing something. Okay, very common. Interesting structure, which is impedir que alguien haga algo. All right, important. To refer to is hacer referencia a. Next one, to rely on, confiar en. And the next one, smile at, sonreír a. Okay, so it's important, the preposition at. To succeed in, tener éxito en. Okay, the verb is different. It's succeed, not have exit. It's just to succeed. Significar is to stand for. Okay, I stand for this. Significar, or this stands for. Okay. The next one is thank somebody for. Agradecer a alguien por. The next one, volunteer to. Ofrecerse para hacer algo. Okay, volunteer to. And the last one is to warn somebody about. Okay, so advertirle a alguien. So as you can see, we have quite an extensive list of verbs followed by dependent prepositions, okay? Now that we know their meaning, let's look at some of them in context, okay? So in the last part here, and my third point of this episode, I'll be looking at example sentences. So let's have a quick look then. What you've got here, I'll give you the business situation where it's used in the context, then the verb preposition, and finally, I'll give you an example sentence. So the first one, in a meeting, all right, you could use the expression add to. So example sentence, I would like to add to what you said earlier by saying. I would like to add to what you said earlier by saying ... Okay. In the next example, reporting, when you're explaining something or reporting something back to someone, you could use the verb or verb plus preposition insist on. John insisted on having his proposal included in the forecast. John insisted on having his proposal included in the forecast. Right, next one, in an email, okay? We can use this expression commonly in an email. Deal with. We can deal with this problem at a later stage. We can deal with this problem at a later stage. The next one, in a presentation, all right? Believe in. So, at Pharmaco Corporation, we strongly believe in enhancing long-term shareholder value. At Pharmaco Corporation, we strongly believe in enhancing long-term shareholder value. Okay, next one. On a company tour. Okay, so to thank somebody for. I would like to thank Mary and Sue for joining us here today at the factory. Okay, so I would like to thank Mary and Sue for joining us here today at the factory. And on a telephone call. To complain about. Hi Bruce, yes, it's Jill here. I'm calling to complain about a recent order we received. It appears some of the goods arrived damaged. So, hi Bruce, yes, it's Jill here. I'm calling to complain about a recent order we received. It appears some of the goods arrived damaged. And finally, press conference. Comment on. So at a press comment, we can use the expression or the verb plus dependent preposition, comment on. I'm sorry, but I'm unable to comment on this issue at the time. So now that we can see the sentences in use, you'll actually be able to see that other grammatical structural elements become clear. And most obviously, the verbs that follow these prepositions, they do so by taking the ing form. So if you would like to learn more about gerund after verbs and prepositions, then take a look at episode 15 of our podcast. Okay, you'll find that on our blog at The Art of Business English. Okay, so let me just give you guys a few final thoughts. Okay, so we reviewed all of the expressions. We've looked at what or why we have dependent prepositions after verbs, okay, and their importance. And basically, what we just need to do now is look at how we can study these, okay. So basically, if you want to learn and improve your understanding of preposition after verbs, then here are a couple of study tips, okay. Firstly, the best way to internalize structure and vocabulary in English is by reading regularly, okay? Very important. You should try and read as much as possible. Here at the AOB, we always encourage all of our students to read regularly. Remember, you don't need to read, a 1,000-page book. You can read magazines. You can read things that you're interested in, the news, any forums or blog posts, okay? It'll all help. If you don't have time to read, then you can try the following two techniques, okay? First thing is to analyze the list from this podcast or head over to the AOBE website, okay, where all the content is listed, okay? And then review the list and see which verbs plus dependent prepositions you already make mistakes with, okay? I'm sure there'll be some on the list where you typically make a mistake. Note down these in a notebook, okay? And with these verbs, you need to start consciously making the effort to correct yourself when you make the mistake, okay? And secondly, you can note down 5 of your favorite expressions that you think you will use on a regular basis, especially now that you know the translation, and just start to incorporate them into your daily business English. Basically, start by including them in your emails or presentations, okay? And remember that these prepositions are fixed and dependent, meaning once you've learned them, you will know them for life, okay? So that's the good thing about dependent prepositions. Well, basically, that's all we have time for today. So I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Remember to share this content with your friends and family. Be sure to leave us a comment over at the AOB website or at our Facebook page at facebook.com/the AOBE. And remember, we love to help, so send us your questions and we'll be happy to prepare some answers for you. So till next week, take care and happy learning your dependent prepositions after verbs. Bye for now.